Like and subscribe right now, or else this will be in your bed tonight. r/ask Reddit by Planet Reddit. People of Reddit, what's one mistake or decision you made that completely altered the course of your life? Forgot hamburger buns. Dad died. Depressed. Was without a job for over a year. Applied at a few different places and heard nothing back. Went to a BBQ at a friend's house and stopped at the store first. We got everything we needed. Went out to the car. Started packing up and realized we forgot hamburger buns. I go back in the store. I'm walking down the frozen foods aisle and run into an old coworker who happened to now be a manager at one of the places I applied at months ago. Chatted it up with him for a little bit, and 3 days later, I get a call out of the blue to come in for an interview at his company he worked at. I've been with the company 18 years. Last month, all because of the chance encounter in the frozen food aisle. All because I forgot hamburger buns. I read the first 2 sentences and thought, how did your dad die because you bought hamburger buns? I mean, survivor's guilt and similar stuff is definitely a thing. LOL. Said yes to going to the pub. I was on a backpacking trip around Europe. At a hostel in Belfast, this Australian guy who was in the same dorm as me asked if anyone wanted to join him for a drink. Me and a New Zealander tagged along. We had an absolutely epic night in what was then still a city under martial law. Next day we all went in different directions, but I kept in contact with the Australian. At some stage, months later, he mentioned that I should come and visit him in Australia. About 6 months later I did. I had a fantastic time. Traveled around Australia and liked it so much that I applied for a residency permit. 30 years later I'm still here. It's been absolutely great. But none of that would have happened if I didn't say yes to a few beers all the way back in the 80s. NGLU really had me in the first half. Most life-altering stories that are tagged by the phrase saying yes to going to the pub do not end on a positive note. I know, right? I got super nervous for the ending when he said yes to the pub. I was expecting a romantic ending. Went to meet my bio mom. 8 years later, a crippling disorder, brain damage, and some significant trauma later. Turns out there was a very good reason I was adopted. I got to meet my sisters though, and I'm the uncle to a whole herd of nieces and nephews. And I wouldn't trade that for the world. Makes the damage worth it. Honestly, the way their faces light up when they see me and how loved I feel with them is something you can't ever replace. Did she hit you or something? Or did you just find out you had genetic brain issues? Drug addict who physically, mentally, and emotionally abused me, stalked me, tried to kill me when I tried to leave, and only stopped when a restraining order and 9mm were brought into the picture. I had a psychotic break from reality due to all of this. Spent about a year unable to, well, connect. Period. Mostly had to be drugged up so I wouldn't tear my own skin off. Turns out it's surprisingly easy to break a brain. Just throw in a few years of 24/7 abuse, gaslighting, and drug use, and then try to kill them when they leave. She's not a good person, and she did it to herself. So I have no sympathy. What she did to herself while on meth was bad enough. What she did to me, Jesus fucking Christ. Thank fuck I wasn't raised by her. Oh my god. Jeez. No way you could have predicted that. Sorry it turned out to be so horrible. I'm glad you got away from her, both times. After my dad died when I was 21, I moved from Detroit to Portland for a change of scenery and to get out of the rut of drinking every night with my friends. This was mid-recession, so unemployment was like 14% in Portland. I got a job working 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. in a nightclub 3 nights per week and it sucked. Then I got laid off. I was lost, a college dropout, no money, no job, and even the promise of a mild winter didn't happen. Portland got their worst snowstorm in 30 years. I found out a college buddy lived in Portland and we connected. We went out on a Tuesday night and we ate mushrooms. And in the moment of clarity that mushrooms give you as you are coming down, I realized how much I hated living in Portland. I texted one friend and said let's move to NYC, and texted another and said let's move to Chicago. I woke up and they had both said no. I thought fuck it, I'll move to Chicago anyway. So I sold my car that Friday, bought a train ticket and was on a train Monday. Cut to 12 years later. I still live in Chicago. I went back to school and got my degree. I have a good job. I just celebrated my first wedding anniversary, albeit in quarantine rather than the Mexico trip we had scheduled. We have an awesome dog, and we're closing on a house next month. All of this because I took mushrooms and decided to move to Chicago. Are you telling me I should do drugs? I think you know the answer is yes. Remember that hallucinogens are transformative. You might be better, you might be worse, but you'll definitely be different. They gave me far-seeing eyes. My wonderful 2-year-old daughter was not planned, but thanks to her, I decided to have a vasectomy. I had always had one slightly enlarged testicle due to a mountain biking accident 10 years prior. My urologist had it biopsied because it didn't look right. Turns out I had had testicular cancer for an impossible to determine period of time. 4 rounds of chemo later and I'm perfectly fine. Had I not had my daughter, I would have probably had much worse results years later when it finally made its presence known via pain and had spread into my body. So my daughter technically saved my life, which is knowledge I'm sure she'll use on with great glee during her teenage years when I'm trying to punish her. Years ago I was heading to Hawaii in February and I was pasty white, so I decided to go to a tanning salon first to get base tan and not burning high. The bed was in a mirrored room and I noticed my left testicle was enlarged. Had surgery and radiation and I am fine. So getting a tan saved me from dying of cancer. Your story is more heartwarming. Good you noticed it. Base tan is a dangerous myth perpetuated by tanning salons, though. Nah dude, you're probably safe from that as I doubt many teenage girls will want to talk about their dad's balls. If anything, you have the upper hand on her. Smoked synthetic cannabis, mental breakdown, antipsychotics, complete change in my physique and personality. 2030 was a blur. I'm on very low doses of my meds with careful management from my shrink. But I know I will need them for the rest of my life. Lost so many years and experiences that I'll never get back. Stay the hell away from spice, K2, Black Mamba and the like if you value your mind. Not sure if I'm rude for asking or if even you're comfortable sharing, but what did you experience while under the influence of spice? Obviously whatever it was crushing for your psyche. Totally understand if you'd rather not relive it by describing it here. Hope you're doing well nowadays, buddy. Not OP. But spice was definitely the worst high I've ever experienced. I can recall one specific time where I smoked a bowl of flour before my buddy pulled out the sack of pineapple spice. I should have known it wasn't anything to mess with as soon as I smelt it, and it legit smelled like pineapples. I took one hit and before I could even look up I was gone. It was like a movie where the camera zooms back from the character on screen to represent the distortion they're feeling. It was almost exactly like that. Weed messes with your sense of time, but spice will completely yuck with your sense of reality. I can't really recall how it occurred, but at some point I was laying on my friend's bed rocking back and forth saying this isn't real, and after my friends got me to calm down I started shoving fistfuls of fruity pebbles in my face. Not in my mouth. More like punching myself in the face and letting the cereal fall all around me. I went on absurd rants. I called my ex and just blurted out complete nonsense. I'd completely lost my sense of self. I woke up the next day with a blistering headache, and the spice supplier yelling at the other guys hanging out in the house for stealing the spice in the middle of the night and smoking the rest of it. Spice tolerance is exponential. Being that it was my first time I couldn't take anything more than one hit, whereas my friends were chasing what I was feeling all night. My buddy who was supplying was buying ounces for $20 and at 16 years old we really thought it was gonna be some godsend we'd always needed. I smoked it maybe 3 or 4 more times, and while I don't have the lasting effects OP has, I've had persistent closed eye hallucinations when I'm completely sober ever since. I can cover my eyes and hallucinate almost on command. I'll never know if it was from the spice, but I bet it is. Sounds like HPPD. I have it too. It gives you visual snow, which is like a faint overlay of TV static on your vision. It also causes colors to have a rainbow border around them, especially colors that contrast with others a lot, like black. When I look at black I no longer see solid black, it's weird. In a dark room I'll see purple green kaleidoscope patterns moving on the walls and shit from when I tripped. NMWikipedia.org link. When I moved and switched middle schools way back, I threw out all my stuff except for my math textbook. When I went to my new school, the math class I was in was a little bit behind from where I was, and I told them, but they didn't believe me. But then I showed my old math textbook to show that I was way ahead of that class. 2 of my classes were changed, and in both of my new classes were a bunch of friends I made. If I threw away that math textbook, I wouldn't have any good friends right now. They wouldn't let you test out, or was this in middle high school? This was middle school. I should have specified that. I lied to CPS when I was 13. I finished growing up with my dad instead of being taken away. I knew what I was doing, and looking back I wouldn't change it. I've met some wonderful people, and I don't think I would have met them if I had told the truth that day. What happened with your dad? Why were they there? etc. If you mind answering, it's okay if you don't, I am just curious. My dad let me play physical sports so that way he could beat me and the bruises wouldn't be suspicious. Well, my coach noticed that the pattern of the bruises appearing didn't coincide with games scrimmage practice, so he called CPS. Overall, just a drunk old man abusing what power he had. I know I would have gone into the system, and that's one place I didn't want to be, because I had met kids from foster homes and they always ended up moving away after about a year. I've worked through a lot of it with a therapist, but quite frankly I kind of don't want kids. I'm scared to resemble my dad in any way, shape or form. I am so sorry you had to go through this. Hopefully you, and possibly your dad, are all in better places now. 3. Here is a quote I saw on Reddit the other day. It is better to be at the bottom of a ladder you want to climb than in the middle of one you don't. Not sure who wrote it, but it fits well with this post. I saw this too. Not sure either, but it's a great quote. Join our community Discord, link in description. I went to school to get one specific job. In urban areas, you need a minimum of 5 years experience to even apply. I decided that I only wanted this job and didn't care about geography, so I started applying while still finishing my master's degree. I was offered the exact role I wanted, immediately permanent, full-time, full benefits, defined benefit pension plan, 3 weeks vacation, and the exact same salary as urban areas, but it was a low cost of living area, and it was in buttock nowhere. I knew where it was on a map, and that was about it. So I accepted the job with the intention to get a little experience and get back to city as soon as possible. Well, 11 years later I am still here. I love this village. My quality of life is amazing. I found my partner here. I have a 2-minute commute to work. It is unbelievable how much of a difference no commute does for hobbies and work-life balance. I am leaps and bounds ahead of my friends who steadfastly remained in urban areas. Some are still not in permanent jobs or getting a pension and whatnot. I have been debt-free since a year after moving here and able to retire comfortably at 55 if I wanted to. Being simply open-minded about geography changed my entire life. It also makes going to the city feel like a fun trip away. I guess we are simple folks here. As someone who has been working from home a few months now, I find I actually miss my commute. Do I miss the days when traffic sucks and I'm stop and go? Hell no. But on normal days, my 15-minute drive to work would give me time to plan out my day, and on my drive home I could plan out my evening. I should point out that I've had 1+ hour commutes for other jobs. Those sucked. It's all about moderation. The greater good. I met a guy online on AOL in 1994, fell in love, moved 2,300 miles away from home to be with him. Could have been a disaster, but 26 years later, we are happily married and are still very much in love. Best decision I've ever made. I'm similar. In 2007, I began chatting with a guy on a book series web forum, The Wheel of Time, and met him in person in October of that year. Had a long distance relationship with him for 4 years with flying back and forth every few months. Then in 2011 we got married and I moved 1,450 miles to be with him. Happily married since and for the foreseeable future. Yay. Happy 26 years together. A buddy of mine called me up one day to tell me he and his toxic controlling girlfriend had broken up and he wanted to celebrate with a few drinks. At the time, I was living a very antisocial lifestyle. and I almost said no, but something that day told me I needed to get out of the house, so I agreed. Turns out that was the night I'd meet my future wife. When we were reminiscing about that night, my wife said she, too, almost declined going out. Flying into Tulsa from San Diego in 1998, coming home on a 3-week leave from the service after a 16-month deployment. A few days before, there had been a bad ice storm and the roads were still slick. My wife insisted on picking me up from the airport after I suggested taking a cab home. I didn't want her driving on those slick roads because there was an 8-mile stretch of country 2-lane road from our house to town, and it could get pretty treacherous. Due to minimal maintenance, she refused to drive an old Cherokee Chief that I had at the house and chose to drive her 2WD Ranger pickup. She lost control of the truck and went down a 40-foot embankment, losing her life in the process. We had a 1-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son at home that grew up without a mother, and I've spent the last 22 years kicking myself for not simply pissing her off to the point that she wouldn't drive, and I could just make up with her when I got home. I should have argued harder with her or had one of her brothers come and pick me up. I met my new daughter for the first time, with her mother gone. I was basically meeting both my children for the first time, as I had deployed when my son was my daughter's age. Neither knew me, and both were absolutely terrified and confused. The happy ending is that both children had a great childhood, grew up smart, well-adjusted, and successful. Daughter is finishing her master's degree, and my son is a successful electrician raising a young son on his own. There's always a struggle in my mind that I'll always deal with. My wife wasn't going to ever move from Oklahoma, and I planned on being a career Marine, so we would have ended up divorced, no doubt, and I wouldn't have the bond with my children that I do now. I lost the love of my life, but I gained a great relationship with my kids. My children lost their mother, but they didn't have to grow up with an absent father. Life is funny. That is heavy. Whoa. Sounds like you did what you had to do to get by, and still managed to raise good kids. I'm sorry you lost your love, but amazed that you can see the silver lining. Oh my god. Thank you for this. I have what I thought was a bruise under the nail of my big toe, but hasn't gone away, even after a few months. With everything going on, I've been putting off getting it looked at. Doctor appointment has been scheduled for later this week. Good luck, brother/sister. I read the book Claudius. Loved it so much I scheduled a trip to visit Italy. While touring the sites, randomly met an American guy who was an IT guy, like me, for an American school there. A few weeks after coming back to the States, I emailed him and he told me he's getting married and moving back to the States and offered me his old position. 3 months later I was on a plane back to Italy, lived there for 4 amazing years and made some great lifelong friends. The fact that your life was made better by an ancient emperor is so incredible. I love reading ancient books too. Dad, wanna go to the gun range this weekend? Me. Sure sounds fun. It would turn out to be anti-fun. Got shot by a stranger. Almost died. Now have permanent nerve damage and poor blood flow in my right leg. Edit for the story. Was at a gun range and a guy with a AK-47 accidentally negligently shot me point blank in the groin. I was talking to a random guy about AKs and he told me he had one with a bad trigger. I work on guns and trigger work is easy to do, so we go over where he has 2 AK-47s in a hard rifle case. No mags in them and we are just talking, so he reaches down to what I thought to grab the handle and pulls the trigger with his thumb. Heard a dull thud and it felt like someone kicked me in the right leg. I was 3 inches from the end of the barrel. Adrenaline kicked in super hard and it hurt very little at first. I was able to take a few steps and lay myself down with my leg blown apart. It didn't start to hurt until halfway through the helicopter ride to the hospital. The real pain happened after surgery and the next 12 that came after it. I was on the highest dosage of IV drip dilaudid they could give and I would still pass out from pain in the intensive care unit. The first time I was awake enough for them to show me how the meds button worked on my IV drip, I pressed it 184 times in 12 hours. It had a built-in 4 hours delay between hits, so I didn't OD, but meds wasn't working. I'm no wussy either. My pain level is stupid high. The skin graft. 2 inches x 8 inches strip off my left leg. I later got to patch the hole never hurt. I was told it was going to be terrible by the doctors. I can feel, with my hand, a large bullet fragment kinda close to my right butt cheek leg area, but it doesn't bother me. Imgur.com link. Just an x-ray. Nothing gross. Ouch. How did the getting shot part happen? I bet in Doom with a bullet. Probably was a gun involved too. Taking videography as an elective in middle school instead of photo like my sister. Throughout high school I won numerous student filmmaking awards. Made tons of friends I never would have had I not joined those classes. Developed a super useful skill. And got paying jobs throughout high school because of my skill set. I even got hired at my current job because of my video skills. Just arrived to Basic in featuring Benning. They had us all in this room giving us like a welcome speech. The drill SGT left and I had to pee, so I got up and went to the bathroom. When I came back to the room nobody was there. I walked around till I found a different drill SGT and he said he had no time for my stupid shit and took me to a room with a whole different group of guys. They were like a day ahead of me in the reception phases. So I was quickly caught up. I didn't have to deal with a ton of the BS that others had and the group I was placed with became 11B instead of 11C. That sent me to a unit that got an amazingly awesome mission in Afghanistan. And led me to meeting some awesome people and getting crazy life stories. So when you need to pee, just go pee. When you need to pee, just pee. U/knocked my tea. After finishing pre-university college, me and a friend went to Australia on a working holiday visa. In Sydney, I worked for a few months saving money while my friend worked for accommodation in a hostel without pay. We were supposed to go travel up the east coast and she had no savings. I waited for her for a few weeks. Got her a job she quit because she didn't like it. Then decided to go on my own. While on that east coast trip, I met an English guy. Wouldn't have met him if I had gone when I was supposed to. We ended up both living in Melbourne for 5 months. Got in a relationship etc. It's been 3 years and he has now come to Canada twice. I went to England and Wales twice. We went to Eastern Europe together. And in 2 months if all goes well I'm going to study abroad for a year in England, where he lives. It'll be the first time we live together. Been a year since I saw him last. So it's exciting. Is our life a never-ending string of side quests? Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.